All right, so here are with Talike and Vivek, and of course they'll be teaming up, of course, to talk about a local college students. Of course, they'll be discussing policies of President Donald J. Trump. And you want to join me on the studio?
Of course.
You want us to watch it together?
Yes, baby.
All right, so guys, without any further ado, let's get on to the video and then check this out.
The gentleman there.
Disagreeers come to the
Hey,
front.
it's a White Dudes for Harris shirt.
Hey! What's up? Okay, so my question was about the hurricane response. So I'm a native Georgian. Yo, shout out. Yeah. Okay, so in light of the hurricane relief bill was contested by several Republicans. Republicans like Ted Cruz and Mike Braun both stated they were going to withhold their vote so they could get more funding for the state of Israel and their genocide against the Palestinians. And my thing is, do you disavow their actions, and do you disavow the genocide in Gaza?
Do you think Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have done a good job at managing hurricane relief in Georgia and North Carolina?
They can't allocate funds. That's the job of Congress.
Well, they can. They actually spent $1 billion of FEMA money on illegal
okay,
migration.
but will you answer the question?
No.
Was it wrong for them to deny relief
No,
to Georgians,
that's
North
not what
Carolinians,
happened.
and Tennesseans?
It's not what
for
happened.
Israel?
That's not what happened. But I'm asking you, has Kamala Harris and Joe Biden done a good job of helping the people of Georgia and North Carolina?
So we're just not going to answer the question?
I said that's not what happened. So we're getting back to it. So it's a false premise, right? But I'm asking something that maybe we can agree on. Can you at least say that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have failed the people of Georgia?
I disagree. They can't get funding from Congress.
FEMA has plenty of funding. They've decided to spend that money on non-FEMA related matters, such as southern border
That's fake.
invasion.
That's fake news.
Over $1 billion has been used on luxury hotels and migrant
Okay,
resettlement.
will you answer the question? Do you think it was wrong for the Republican congressman to withhold aid for Israel?
They did not withhold it. The FEMA bill has passed before. FEMA is fully funded. And again, you're very stuck on the issue of Israel, and you're kind of conflating with two different things.
Well, because this is a serious issue. We could have put our country first and give our country aid, but our congressmen that are supposed to represent our country withheld aid so they can send it overseas.
That's not what happened at all. So I'm happy to keep on saying that, but for the fourth time, fifth time, sixth time.
So do you
can
disagree
we at
with
least
their
agree?
action?
Can we? Yes, if that was the case, I would disagree with it, but that's not what happened. So I'll even grant you the hypothetical, okay? But let me ask you a question. You're wearing a White Dudes for Harris shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. What is her greatest accomplishment?
Being an idol for being an idol.
One second. So tell me what she has ever done that you think is great, an achievement that she should be president.
Being vice president.
Is Mike Pence your idol?
No.
I understand that one.
He didn't break the glass ceiling like she did.
So let me just ask you, what has she done for you in the last 4 years to make you view her as an idol?
I mean, she's just the vice president. She can't do much, but I think just being herself, being a real boss.
So let me ask you about her view, because I'm actually of a slightly different view. I don't think that somebody else held a sign that says Kamala. I think that's giving her too much credit, actually. I don't think to be a communist you have to have views. She doesn't have views. And I guess I'll leave it to you, where 4 years ago she said that she would end the filibuster to ram through the Green New Deal. Now she says she's not in favor of it. What is your view on her change of position on that matter?
I don't really care.
Okay. 4 years ago.
So why are you voting for her?
Oh, just because I said she's an idol for the Democratic Party.
So she was against a ban on. She was in favor of a ban on fracking 4 years ago. Today she says she's not against it. Is that something an idol would do? Is to change their mind without explanation?
I don't think fracking is a big deal.
It's a big deal to a lot of Americans, but I'm not even asking about whether it's a big deal. She changes her mind on a big question that matters to a lot of people. You're totally fine with that, keeping her idol.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Kamala Harris, now she wants to, she said 4 years ago she wants to put a tax on unrealized capital gains. So that's going to wipe out a lot of the stock market and result in a Great Depression.
Me and you both know that's not going to happen.
Well, so the things that she says she's not going to happen, that's why she's your idol. I'm just trying to understand when somebody who has told you one thing 4 years ago tells you a different thing today. See, I think if somebody's going to be your idol, at least make it somebody who's consistent about their actual belief or has beliefs rather than somebody who has none. That'd be my view.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
But I just in closing though, what is the sales pitch for other white dudes to support Harris? Would you say?
I would say because she's looking out for us, she's looking out for the country, and she's an inspiration.
But you say that you objected to sending money to Israel for the genocide. Do you disagree with Kamala Harris sending $200 billion to Ukraine?
She didn't do that. She's the vice president.
She actually casted a tie-breaking vote a couple times that did send money to Ukraine. She has voiced support for Ukrainian war and spoke at the Munich Security Conference. So you did. Let's just broaden it and be even more fair. Do you think the Biden administration with Kamala Harris was wrong to spend $200 billion on the war in Ukraine?
I think it's open to debate about that.
One final question for you. All right. Do you believe that it is a disaster to select someone for the job based on their race and their gender?
It depends.
Because I'm actually talking about Tim Walz in this case.
Oh, wow.
Another white dude for Harris.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
I have to say, he captured white dude for Harris energy perfect.
Yeah, should be good.
My main question is like.
Oh, okay. All right, guys, that's a very interesting one. Listening to Charlie Kirk and Vivek, of course, debating these college students. But then at the course of it, my girlfriend walked into the studio, and of course, I says, okay, she just sit down and take this out in a stand together with us. So, I guess you listened to the videos, huh?
Yes, I did.
All right. So, like the first guy that was talking about, was talking about the white dude for Kamala Harris, but then they're asking that what is the accomplishment of Kamala Harris, and then he was saying that she was the greatest vice president, and then saying something like she's an idol and an inspiration. Like, imagine like you're in the US, like would you have voted for Kamala Harris?
Definitely no.
But why? Like why?
Even the guy himself, he was not able to like prove the reason why he feels like, okay, she's worthy of being the vice president at that time, because he could not really like account for what she has really done, like the impact she has put into the lives of the citizens.
Yeah.
Because when they asked him, you were just like, she's an idol. Idol to who? Is it to him or like who exactly is she an idol to? Like, I want to get, is it to the ladies or to himself? He said she's just being herself. Like, being yourself is an enough reason for him to say that she's an idol. That's not enough reason. Everybody can be in power and be yourself and all that, but it's the impact you make, like the lives you touch. Like, you have a position, they have given you that power. What did you use that power to do? Did you use it to touch the lives of people? Did you change things, or you were just relaxed being yourself, meaning you just enter the power, then you are just yourself, relaxed, being an idol, looking beautiful? Is it like that every day you dress up looking smart, beautiful, go to the office and take selfies, then you are yourself?
You know, one thing that some of these Democrats they normally say is that they will be like, well, Kamala Harris, was the president. Okay, Kamala Harris, while she is the vice president, there are two important tasks that she handled, and which is one, the border. The second is the war between Russia and Ukraine. And then when we go through the border, for instance, we could talk about some of the policy that she implemented, because President Donald J. Trump, what he did is that he tried to build the border so that the illegals cannot come to the country. And you know that there's always issue when people comes to country. Of course, they have their own belief system. So therefore, there is going to have an issue when it comes to integration into that host country in which you come in. And then therefore, people tend to commit crime because those are what they are used to in their previous country. And those are some of the issues that they are facing. And then aside from that, we could talk about how over 220,000 kids are missing. So imagine you as a mother and then you lost your child. People are not really putting themselves in this kind of situation.
Because it hasn't happened to them yet, or any close relations. So they don't really understand what people go through, those victims.
Exactly. They don't really think about it as a mother. And then that's why some of them just feels like, oh, it's nothing. You understand? Yeah. And then aside from that, of course, this war in Ukraine, of course, we could talk about how people are actually losing their lives and it's affecting everyone. And then the truth about it is that we all know that Ukraine can never win that war against Russia. That's the saddest truth about it. But then those are the reality of some of what we are into. And then billions, over 200 billion has been spent. She has spent. So now when you say that now because she was a vice president and now she wants to be president, then what do you think she can be able to achieve if she become the president? Which automatically means that if she win, she's going to perform woefully because she don't really have anything, you understand, to offer, because 2 important tasks that was given to her, she did not handle it well. So what makes you think that if she's the president, she can be able to do better? Yeah, so it just looks like, oh, it's not gonna be better. But then nevertheless, you understand, that's people's opinion or what, you understand, they think. So whatever that will happen, let's maybe probably continue watching the video. Or what do you think?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, okay, so let's watch to some level then.
Okay, so I'll try to be as quick as possible because I have to go to class, but I want to go back to January 6th real quick. Let's just start with like a point of a common ground. Hypothetically, if one of our candidates had insurrected the government, or at least attempted to, do you think that candidate is eligible to be voted upon?
Well, the Constitution says no, but it wasn't an
Correct.
insurrection. No one's been tried for insurrection. And
You do realize that he's being tried on that.
no,
right
he
now.
isn't.
He's actually not.
Well, not on insurrection, the specific
No, he's not.
statute, but he's being
No,
tried
he's
for
not.
that.
Insurrection is a very specific crime in the federal code. He is not being tried for insurrection.
I understand that, but he's still being tried on that case, right?
No, he's being tried on the events of that day,
Correct.
which is not an
That's
insurrection.
No, well, okay, fine.
That
We can
I
say-
word is actually a super important word because
Uh-huh.
that literally means armed rebellion to overtake the United States
Not
government.
necessarily. You don't have to
Well,
be an
So
umbrella.
just
It does have
which,
definition
Which
in the
class are you going
Constitution,
to? Which class do you have
Ethics.
next? Ethics. Okay, so it's relevant.
Hold on.
So go to the Constitution. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment,
Correct,
though.
yes.
Insurrection
Yep.
is the word that's used.
Indeed.
So there was actually
rebellion,
in
right.
insurrection and rebellion. So,
Right.
so there was widespread speculation about whether Jack Smith would bring this case against Donald Trump.
Indeed. Yep.
He did not.
Do you know
Because the
why
legal
he did-
definition.
why did he do that?
And
Why
the
did he-
reason
Uh-huh.
Jack Smith didn't bring the case
Insufficient evidence.
is that he would have lost 9-0 at the Supreme Court if
Not
he did.
necessarily. Well, hold on.
Because
that's funny that you say that. Okay.
that's exactly the result that they had with a number of the cases that have gone to the Supreme Court
Hold
as
on.
well.
You say it would be 9-0 at the Supreme Court, right?
As it was on the case where Trump could be on the ballot, went to the Supreme Court, it was 9-0, hands down.
Okay, so
This would have been 9-0 as
one
well.
of one of Trump's private counsels, okay, one of his lawyers, right? I believe his name was
Name doesn't
Eastman.
matter.
John Eastman.
Eastman, correct. Is it not true that he also thought that his plan to attempt to coup the government, or attempt to, let's say, subvert the electoral process in 2020 would lose 7-2 at the Supreme Court, and then he later amended that comment by saying it would actually probably lose 9-0 at the Supreme Court. You understand that? He said
So
that,
what
right?
was your what is the question you have as
The
it relates to
question
January
is very,
6th?
it's very simple. Okay, if one of our presidential candidates had attempted to coup the government, he is unelectable.
Obviously.
Correct. And you just deny the fact that Trump attempted to coup the government.
No, he did not. That's not
did
what
not.
happened that day.
Okay.
What happened that day is he had a rally a mile and a half away from the Capitol.
Okay, well, sorry. Ooh. To everybody here, I implore you to read the first section of Jack Smith's court filings, or read the Wikipedia page, or read the one.
But you have to be honest. Half of that got
Yes.
thrown out by the U.S. Supreme Court on presidential immunity, right?
Do you think that?
Half of it is invalidated.
Do you think that was a reasonable Supreme Court ruling?
Of course, more than
You re-
reasonable.
You really think so?
Yes, it was
Okay.
nearly unanimous.
Even the
I
liberal
like where we're
justices.
pivoting.
Do you,
Okay,
do you
we can-
think,
we
no,
can
hold
discuss
on.
this.
It's not
Uh-huh.
pivoting. You have
Okay.
to be honest. Do
Uh-huh.
you think Barack Obama should be able to be tried for war
I
crimes
don't
for
care.
killing?
I have no interest to-
hold on.
to
This is
speak about anyone
important.
else besides Trump.
I'm saying this. You have hold on. Your standard must apply equally. Presidential immunity means what happens when you do during president cannot be. You cannot have crimes brought against you if it's in your official code of business. You agree with that?
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
There's
so
no precedent in the entire
hold on. Yes,
history
there
of-
is.
There is none. Absolutely.
Let
For
me
criminal immunity.
let me
Okay, go
finish.
on.
Okay.
Go on.
Obama killed a U.S. citizen without due process on foreign soil. That is a war crime.
No, it's not.
Yes.
Wait. He went to legal counsel, correct?
But legal counsel can be
Also,
wrong,
we're
man.
pivoting.
Hold on.
It doesn't matter
I
if
could
it's
bring
wrong.
that
It's-
case. I could bring that case in any jurisdiction across the country. He did not get First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights, Fifth Amendment rights, Sixth Amendment rights. They just drone strike a U.S. citizen. Imagine
Right.
if the government just does that. They just come by and pop you in the head. That's illegal. And
That's
Obama
not
did
illegal.
that. But however, I don't think Obama should be able to go to prison because
Okay.
you should get immunity as president against your actions, or else a president would never be able to do anything. But sure.
Okay, regardless, okay? Going back to January 6th, okay? You do acknowledge do you acknowledge any of the voter fraud allegations or any of that?
do
or
you
no?
do you think Donald Trump committed a coup against the U.S. government?
He attempted to, absolutely.
So why do you believe he left the White House?
What do you mean, why did he leave the White House? His
Okay,
coup-
so somebody who's
his
really
coup
leading a
attempt failed.
coup.
It failed.
Why did he call for the
Hold on.
protesters to go home? I just think this idea.
No, he didn't do that though, right? He
somehow there
waited
was
3
this-
hours in the White House
That's
as
not
multiple.
correct.
Oh,
Within-
really?
within 30
It's
minutes-
Not correct?
within 30 minutes, he
Absolutely
sent a
not.
tweet out and
he
said,
sent a
"Go
tweet.
home."
No,
30 minutes.
Hold on. He said to stay. He said to remain peaceful, correct? He
He
told
said
rioters to
peacefully-
remain peaceful.
Hold on a
Does
second.
that make sense?
Peaceful and patriotically before anything ever happened at the Capitol.
He said that one time during his 1.5-hour speech at the Ellipse, correct?
Well, so you
Multiple
acknowledge he said
times.
peaceful and patriotically march.
I'm not a 4-year-old who analyzes the speech takes out one sentence from a speech and says it's all okay.
When did he ever say do anything violent?
He said to fight, or else you're gonna lose your country.
It's
what does that
interesting.
mean?
Do you know what else when he said
mean?
fight after he got shot?
What does that mean?
You know, also, you know who says fight? Kamala Harris has it as her campaign slogan, fight. When we fight, we win. I heard every 20
Doesn't matter.
seconds
Wait,
at the
hold
DNC.
on. Did Kamala Harris and the Democrats try to coup the government?
Well,
Break into
actually,
the
yes.
Capitol?
It's interesting.
Oh, right. Oh, let's do it. Yeah.
Hold on a second.
I love
How
this
did she
so much.
how did she become candidate? How
She was on the
many
ticket.
votes did she get?
She was on the ticket of
Yeah,
Biden,
because
correct?
of a coup. They removed the sitting president named Joe
True.
Biden and
When
put
you
her on
vote
the
for a
top of the
ticket,
ticket.
Who are you voting for? When you vote on a ticket, who are you voting for?
Well, actually, no. In the primary, you're only voting for Joe Biden, not
Hold on,
Kamala
the
Harris.
people aren't voting for that, correct?
In a primary campaign, Kamala Harris was not on the ticket, and you know that's correct. Joe Biden received 16 million primary votes without Kamala Harris as her VP, and all of a sudden they
Also,
said,
I love how we're pivoting all the way out this. This is amazing. I love this.
No, you're the one doing the rabbit hole. I just want to ask a question though. Who died on January 6th?
One person or multiple police officers.
No, actually, one person died on January
Yeah,
6th, and it was Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed Trump supporter who got
Okay.
shot in the head by one of
Maybe
Nancy.
she shouldn't have trespassed in the Capitol. I don't know. Yeah, I know.
What-
It's gonna be a hard one. I will bite that bullet. Absolutely.
Obama's
Absolutely.
death penalty now makes more
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. No, so the death penalty for walking through your own Capitol.
No, but you shouldn't be trespassing, trying to subvert the election results. Correct?
Have you seen the video? What happened? No warning whatsoever.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lieutenant Michael Berg pops her right in the head, and this guy says, "Oh, crime me
No
a river."
warning? Really? He
Yes.
pulled out the gun and
What-
she jumped through the
what do you
window.
think about the
What do you
death-
expect to happen?
Did you get mad about the death of George Floyd?
I really don't care about any of this. I don't care. Go back to the focus. It's irrelevant to this. It's relevant.
No, it's
you
not.
Can yell all you
The whole
want.
country blew up for George Floyd,
Okay.
and yet a Trump supporter gets shot in
I'll
the
say
head,
I'll say one last thing,
peacefully
and
and
we'll-
patriotically
okay.
protesting, and that's
I
perfectly
implore
fine.
all of you to read the first section of Jack Smith's court filing.
No one's going to read that crap, okay? Instead,
You know what? I'm not surprised.
No.
But we have gotten to the point where we don't trust the media, we don't trust our legislator, we don't trust
Correct.
the executive, we don't trust
You know
anything.
why?
We
They
don't
haven't
trust
earned our
anything.
trust.
Oh, right, true.
Wait,
The
no.
ol-
Let's go through the list. Hunter Biden laptop misinformation. Where did the virus come from?
All right.
Biolabs
Who
in
wants to go
Ukraine.
next?
No, it's exactly, yeah, fine. It's okay. Go to your ethics class.
So my name is Gerald, and my main question is it's for Charlie. Why do you feel like the Civil Rights Act was a mistake?
So parts of it were really good. Parts of it were not so good. So, for example, the way the Civil Rights Act was constituted is that now it is being applied in ways that it was never intended. And so the Civil Rights Act has now been used as this major overarching standard that is not just about ending bitter racial segregation, which I'm against and you're against, right? No person should ever be discriminated based on the color of their skin. What the Civil Rights Act has done, passed through multiple decades, is the law of unintended consequences. That it's created this leviathan within the Department of Justice. For example, let me give you just another example. I have like 100 of these.
Bet.
In the state of North Carolina, they wanted to say that you need voter ID in order to vote. I don't know where you come down on that issue. I think that requiring identification to vote is so normal, so simple. It is skin color. It's colorblind, right? Merrick Garland from the Department of Justice came in and sued and says you should not be able to ask for voter ID because of the Civil Rights Act, because it disproportionately hurts black Americans. So what would happen is the Civil Rights Act, it did not target discrimination. It targeted disparities. And disparities is different than discrimination. Does that make sense? So individualized discrimination, we've always been against. But what happens if you have one group that does better than another group? There are other explanations for that other than racism. Unfortunately, the Civil Rights Act, what it does is it goes back and says everything can be ascribed back to racism as our original sin. Now, let me just go one final point, is that the fanfare that the Civil Rights Act is met with, it's almost like the new Constitution. We talk about the Civil Rights Act more than the Constitution. It is cited more than the Constitution. We almost had a new American founding in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Act, which, again, I want to be very clear, and I've always been, no human being should ever be discriminated against because of the color of their skin. That is always something we've agreed with. But the Civil Rights Act has become almost the super constitution of the land.
So
Let me say a couple words, because this is actually something that's near and dear to my heart. The Civil Rights Act was part of a broader project that LBJ had called the Great Society. And one of the things, I'm a pragmatist, I'm a businessman by background. I look at the results. So let me share a couple hard facts with you, which is that turns out that you're much more likely to end up in prison, you're much more likely to end up in poverty, you're much more likely not to graduate from high school if you grow up in a single-parent household versus a dual-parent household. Mm-hmm. Today, you're talking about upwards of 60% of black kids born into single-parent households rather than dual-parent. What number do you think that was in the 1950s before the Great Society?
Probably like 40.
It was even less, 20%.
Damn.
20% back then. So then we look at what the results have been of this entire agenda. Put the Civil Rights Act, put the LBJ Great Society. Black Americans are worse off today, even economically in terms of mobility, than they were back then, in the name of laws that were passed to supposedly advance black interests. So the results haven't worked out so well. I want to just bring it back to this election. All right, and I'm going to ask questions. This is not like it's a grilling, but more because you have no reason to know the answers to these. But we're close to politics, so I'm going to ask you these questions, all right? So what do you think? If you take the first 3 years of Donald Trump versus the first 3 years of Joe Biden, where we have data for it, were more blacks unemployed under Joe Biden, or were they unemployed under Donald Trump?
No, I think they were unemployed under Joe Biden.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's about 70,000 more black Americans were unemployed under Joe Biden. Now look at the ones who are actually employed. Of the black Americans who were employed, did they make more money under Donald Trump or more money under Joe Biden?
I wasn't working, so I wouldn't even know.
Fair enough. It's about $1,500 more per year that black Americans earned under Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. You want to talk about the number of black Americans who own the home they actually live in? 700,000 more own the home they lived in under Donald Trump's years versus Joe Biden. So I end up judging on the basis of results. And this started since LBJ. This was a bribe. I think this was a bribe to black Americans, which earned 95 to 97% loyalty of black Americans to Democrats. That is the single most loyal group to any political party in the history of our countries. 90 to 97% of black Americans tend to vote for Democrats. Without that, the Democratic Party is toast. Mm-hmm. You have been part of the most loyal group to the Democratic Party. The question is, what have you gotten in return for that loyalty?
I feel that.
And the answer is not very much, actually. And I think Donald Trump, when you judge based on the results, has actually given you at least results, even if it's a little bit different than the rhetoric along the way. And I do come down on the same side of Charlie with respect to the Great Society, is that I think in the name of helping black Americans was disastrous. And I think what we would be better doing for all Americans is go back to the first Constitution rather than the second one that we reinvented.
So my question, really to Charlie, you would if you had the opportunity, you would get rid of the Civil Rights Act?
No, I think you should have a one-page bill that says that racial discrimination based on race is illegal and will not be tolerated in the United States of America. I would simplify it. I would not have all. So what happened is that the Civil Rights Act has 9 different titles in it, and you have this leviathan that was created, and something that most black Americans don't support is men and female sports. Would you agree?
Wait, say that again?
Men playing in female sports.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, I know. No, for sure, right?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the Civil Rights Act is now being used to keep men playing in women's sports. So the Civil Rights Act was used to help black America originally. Totally get that. But now the way it was written is that any claim of identification, so someone says, I'm a woman, therefore I can compete in your volleyball team, they come in with a civil rights claim. And so what we're saying is, no, it should be specified to racial, not gender, all that other stuff.
Okay.
And there were all these other provisions as well.
All right, and my last question.
Yeah.
Do you think if Trump come back into office, you think Young Thug is getting free, or any these people in jail? You don't know Young Thug?
Who's getting free?
Young Thug. Is Young Thug getting free if Trump come back into office, and YSL
Would you vote for him if he promised a pardon?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. If Young Thug was coming back, we need new music and stuff, so I feel yeah.
We'll pass that along.
All right, I feel that. Appreciate that.
What's your name again?
Gerald.
Nice to meet you, man. Thank you. Super good question. Thank you.
I'm currently an undecided voter, just because I would say that I'm not going to vote for Kamala. But there's one, I'm a single issue voter, and my issue is over immigration. And I think that the rhetoric that the Republican Party has had towards immigration since 2020, since 2016, has been very aggressive, right? I'm the son of immigrants. My parents came over in the early 90s.
What country?
Mexico.
Legally or illegally?
Illegally. They've been in this country for more of their life now than they've lived in Mexico, and they've been in the system of trying to get some sort of, citizenship or amnesty. But they have been phenomenal role models to me. They've raised 5 wonderful children, conservatively, traditional Mexican conservative values. So that's my issue, and that's why I feel like I cannot vote for Donald Trump, because it also feels like I'm voting against my parents, because I feel like the Republican Party, though I disagree with the Democrats.
So Vivek is uniquely positioned to answer this, because he's also the son of immigrants. So I want you to hear him out very carefully here.
Yeah, so look, this is a hard question because of the position you're in, thinking about your family situation versus that of the country. But I'm asking you for a moment. It's a hard thing to do, but just to wear the hat of a citizen, and then to put yourself back in your position and see how you see it. So yeah, absolutely, but wear your citizen hat rather than your family hat, even though that's a hard thing to do.
Right.
So here's what I would say. Okay, if I was in the position of your parents, probably if anybody here were in the position of your parents in another country seeking a better life in the United States, and you've got presidents for the last, frankly, 5 decades, with the exception of Donald Trump, who have given you a wink and a nod to come over, probably most of us in this audience would have done the same thing too. I don't actually blame those people. I do blame the policymakers who created the incentives to enter this country illegally in the first place. And so the way I look at it is, my parents, they came to this country legally through the front door, and we're a nation founded on the rule of law. If we're founded on the rule of law, right? If that's one of the things, of all of the races and creeds and ages we have in this audience, if there's one thing that unites us, it's that we have certain ideals, like we believe in the rule of law. If we believe in that, that means your first act of entering this country cannot actually break the law. And so wearing our hat as a citizen, we got to have only consent granted to those who enter legally. And if you entered in a way that didn't follow the rules, that's where Donald Trump's coming from, to say that we need mass deportations, not because all of them are bad people, but because we have bad policies in this country that actually created those incentives in the first place. So don't take that as an affront or an insult to your parents personally, who I'm sure are good people to raise a young man like you who's as thoughtful as you've been in asking this question. But when we're looking at what's in the best interest of the country, we're a nation founded on the rule of law. We got to follow the rule of law if we're ever going to revive an immigration system that actually makes sense and advances the best interest of this country. That's where I land.
I agree with that. I agree that when I put on my citizen hat, I can understand from a citizen's perspective, it makes sense. But I also agree with the point that it is not the fault of the people who crossed the border in the early 90s when it was fairly easy. It's the fault of the policymakers and the politicians. And it feels like
Donald Trump understands that. He's married to an immigrant, right? Other members of his family also have done the same. So I think, and I'm married to a kid of legal immigrants. I am one myself as well. So most of us in this country intuitively understand that. But I think the thing that's been extreme, so you brought up one of the reasons you have trouble voting for Donald Trump is because of maybe the extreme rhetoric on the issue of immigration. So the way I look at this is, what's been actually extreme is our policies. What's extreme is 30+ million people crossing a border over the course of 4 years, where you have 350,000 kids that have gone undocumented for. That actually is the extreme policy to which we demand, I think, an appropriate level of anger to marshal the energy to fix the problem. So, you're going to love everything Donald Trump says about this issue? Apparently not, and that's fair. But when you're looking at who's going to do what's best for the country, I still come down on the side of what's clear. Actions speak louder than those words. Follow the actions, and that's how we're going to save our country. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
I'd like to challenge you mainly on like a moral landscape versus like a political landscape, because I've not done my homework in the political realm. So I'd like to challenge you on like your views on abortion and homosexuality. Specifically Charlie, because I've consumed way more of Charlie's of clips. And so I watched a clip of you. I'd like to just confirm your viewpoint real quick.
I answer this at every tour stop. Yes, I do not believe in personally my family would not allow an abortion under any case unless the life of the mother. That's correct.
Okay, so unless the life of the mother?
Unless the life of the mother, of which it would actually not be considered an abortion. It's a medical procedure called a septicectomy, but yes, abortion is the intentional taking of a fetus or a human life. Our family would never do that personally, correct.
Okay. And you were brought up a scenario where a young girl, 10, 15-year-old girl was raped, and you were asked, should she give an abortion, or is it more moral to not give or give this abortion? And you said the baby will be aborted, and I
said the baby will be delivered in the video.
The baby will be delivered. My bad. And I think that's quite harsh to expect someone of this age and this
got it. So
life
I have a
experience
question.
to have to do this.
Someone in this audience was conceived in rape. Can you tell me who?
No.
So I have two ultrasounds. One baby's conceived in rape. One baby was conceived by a loving family. Which one is which?
You cannot tell.
Yeah. So that therefore universal human equality spans to all people regardless of the method of your conception. Correct?
Sure.
So that is my position.
That
so
is not exactly what I'm trying to tackle here. I'm trying to tackle. I want you to look more at the person having to give life to this baby and push it out of their body and go through a pregnancy. And
well, let's ask another moral question then. Is it ever okay to do something evil after an evil act?
I want you to focus on my question real quick.
No,
first.
I've answered it. I've already.
No, you have not answered it.
Well, I said the baby will be delivered because, for example, murdering a baby is not the right thing after an evil. That's the moral position I have.
Sure, in a general statement, that is, I would agree. As a general statement, yes.
But no, so for example, under abortion, do you carve out a new morality? Is there like a different kind of morality that we apply only to abortion?
Well, it really is a case-by-case thing for me.
Really? So that's case by case? I mean, where in life do we do case by case? Don't we have universal human morality, such as you shall not murder, people deserve human rights?
I mean, sure, but the...
Why should abortion be any different?
Because this... I believe the fetus or embryo or however you want to call it or whatever stage it's in, I believe it should not have the exact same rights as me
Got
and
it.
you.
So what species is it?
It is a human.
So then if it's a human species, doesn't it then get human rights?
Not necessarily.
Why?
Because there's a...
At what point does it get human rights?
I believe it gets human rights upon birth, and I think...
Wow, upon birth? So even when it's 35 weeks, has a heartbeat, its own DNA, brain waves, can feel pain, touch, it can hear you, that baby doesn't get human rights?
Well, of course it deserves most rights, but when you are...
Like which ones? Most rights?
Yeah. So if you were to, like for me, if my daughter, was raped, I would 100% expect an option to not have this a baby be born.
No, that's fine. We just disagree. You would be okay with murdering a baby. I would not.
Why? I think murder is a bit of a harsh...
So let me ask, you said you're case by case. Let me give you a case to react to. Pregnant woman walking down the street. She's assaulted. The unborn child dies as a consequence. Should that criminal be held liable for that death or not?
Yes.
Okay, so therefore we agree that was actually a moral wrong and a crime that was committed, which means we have common ground, right?
Yes.
And by the way, you're not alone in that. Nearly every pro-choice person I've met in this country says the same thing, that if the woman is assaulted, she's pregnant, the unborn child dies as a consequence. In that context, I haven't met a single person who says we don't treat that as actually a death, that criminal is responsible for. So that says we actually all share that same instinct in common.
Yes.
Let me just shift. We're on a diverse campus, as Charlie mentioned. We're here in the city of Atlanta. Let me just talk about Planned Parenthood for a second, because there's an agenda here. It's not about these one-off, fringe, theoretical cases. Planned Parenthood was built on a racist agenda to actually stop the birth of one race of people. That is the black race of people. And I know this may be controversial to say, but when you look at the number of deaths in this country, lynching ain't got nothing, actually, on the abortions that have occurred in this country targeted against one racial community. And so when I hear Kamala Harris walking around talking about reproductive rights, I can't stand it anymore, because they're effectively have an agenda preventing the reproduction of one class of Americans. And I think especially sitting where we are today, we got to recognize that racist agenda for what it is, too. So thank you, man. I appreciate the question.
I'd like to just push back a little bit, stay out of, the political realm, who said who said what. And
last word, and then we got to give other people a turn. All right.
All right. So where besides the cultural landscape of my generation, personally I think my generation has started to abuse the abortion, the option of abortion, and that has led to our society, our
we
culture.
Agree.
It started with Margaret Sanger, who was a racist, who was a co-founder of Planned Parenthood, whose effective objective was eugenics in the United States to stop black people and other categories of people from reproducing. That's the legacy before. It's the effect it's had, and it deserves to be called out. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. People. Thank you.
So I kind of disagree. So I am a registered libertarian, so I guess I align a little bit more with you, Vivek. Oh, right into the mic. Sorry about that. I'm a registered libertarian, and again, I'm kind of concerned about the tariffs. Being an Austrian-trained economist, my thinking on the situation is why not let China expand its credit and just fall into a debt trap spiral and, reap the rewards of, cheap goods from China, and then eventually they collapse.
So here's a real answer to that question. So as a libertarian, have you ever read Hayek?
Yeah.
You read The Road to Serfdom?
Yep.
Good. So in The Road to Serfdom, Hayek actually makes clear, and he's misunderstood today in the modern libertarian memory of it versus the real thing.
Yeah.
He says a nation cannot depend, for example, on an adversary for its own military. Let me ask you just a question.
Yeah.
Do you know which nation is the biggest supplier of the U.S. military today? You could probably guess it.
It's China.
It's China. So it makes absolutely no sense, for example, for the United States to depend on China as the number one supplier of our Air Force, our military, including our Army and our Navy. It just doesn't make any sense. 40% of the semiconductors made for the U.S. Department of Defense come from China. So even a principled libertarian, like one of the OGs, like Friedrich von Hayek, would tell you that doesn't make any sense, yet that's where we are today. Here's something also Austrian school economists would tell you is if somebody else is applying a big tariff or an unfair trading advantage to the United States, us saying that we have to play on a level playing field, that's not actually a violation of free market principles. It's a recognition that the market was not free in the first place. So those would be the two things I would leave you with. And if you look at Donald Trump's actual record in his first 4 years, that's actually the way he led. So that's where the actions speak louder than words.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, you can.
If there was a policy that made markets more free but hurt your country, would you support it?
What do you mean by hurt the country?
For example, during the 1970s and 80s, we decided to shut down a lot of factories and send those jobs to China because it made markets more free and we could get goods cheaper, but it obviously hurt the country. So if there was a choice where it made markets freer and it did not hurt the country, would you support it?
No, because I think in the long run it actually helps the country, and I think Reagan's administration kind of shows that.
And see, I just approach it a little bit differently because we got three different views here. One is I don't actually think that it made markets more free. I think the idea of shipping those jobs to China when the government's actually subsidizing those industries was not actually the free market in the first place. It was some made-up mercantilist myth that the CCP took advantage of, laughing at a bunch of people who were at the old generations of conservatives from the 1980s who said that was free market capitalism, when in fact that it wasn't. So that's why
I used to be an Austrian guy. It's all a bunch of rubbish, right? Because it's never worked. And it never will work. It's all abstraction, staring into the sky. And let me tell you, when you go drive through Ohio and Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and you see the deindustrialization of this country, and we were told that it was a good thing, it just hasn't been. And so, again, I went to all the von Mises stuff. I went to all the Hayek stuff. The literature is very compelling, and there is some truth in the monetary policy of Austrian economics. That is the strongest component, where they argue business cycles need to be organic, not artificial, and that the money supply component of Austrian economics is great. However, when we get to trade, there needs to be a non-abstraction, more reality-focused way of looking at how we do trade, and we're just not going to necessarily agree on that. Here's my opinion, is that the ultimate principle should be, is it good for the country, not is it good for the ideology? Yeah. And we've been having policy that's good for ideology, not for the country.
Yeah, so a question I have more for Vivek. So I guess one tariff that definitely affects Americans that Trump's sort of having to come back around to is the electric car tariff. So I agree entirely with the national defense argument. That's part of the reason why Biden was in Angola, to help secure critical resources from the DRC. So I give credit to both candidates for doing that. But electric cars, right? Trump's now saying that, you get $25K.
So here's the deeper
deduction.
issue.
Why should taxpayers have to eat that cost instead of Chinese people subsidizing it overseas?
So you get to the real problem when you start using the word subsidizing. Here's the real problem with the electric cars. Is that taxpayers have been eating the cost since the advent of electric cars in the United States, because taxpayers are paying for some guy in California to buy an electric vehicle at the expense of a guy who wants to buy a gas-powered car in Georgia or in the state of Ohio. So that's the root cause in the first place. So I would say that, here's the thing, and this is where I actually really agree with the bang of Charlie's statement, which is we've never really had the libertarian utopia because we were never operating according to capitalist principles in the first place. So we've had, the state subsidies in the first place, and Donald Trump's in favor of this, by the way. Yeah. Like he says, and I agree with this too. I'm a friend of Elon Musk. I like the fact that he's got Tesla, and that's great. We just shouldn't have the taxpayers paying for other EVs. And the beauty of this is actually, if we got rid of the EV subsidies, a lot of people don't know this, Tesla would actually be better off because a lot of the other Ford and GM and inefficient makers are the ones relying on government largesse in the first place. And so, in some ways, we're in the worst of all worlds, actually. We're neither following Hayek or Mises, nor are we actually doing what's best for American workers or manufacturers. And actually, Pick either of those options. It's going to be better than the state of affairs that exists today. And I think Donald Trump, he's a pragmatist. He gets it. And so that's why to libertarians out there, you got to, you could look at a textbook and say that Donald Trump's not going to be your ideal candidate. But if you look at who actually over the course of 4 years in office better followed those principles, no doubt about it, it's not even the libertarian candidate for U.S. president this time. It's Donald Trump.
Hi. So my main concern for the Republican Party going forward is their insistence on tariffs. Trump has proposed somewhere around 60% tariffs of China and 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. This is extremely concerning. I mean, this is a return to Smoot-Hawley back in Hoover.
Yeah, so tell me why. So tell me what tariffs currently, because we have over 300 of them on the books, that you think are currently harming the American economy.
So I don't know. I can't tell you exactly every tariff on the books.
Tell me one.
Okay. The tariff that Trump imposed on washing machines back in 2017, I believe it was, if you look at the statistics for household appliances in general, they have increased the price, and Biden has actually kept that tariff in play. And obviously, this is something that's kind of it doesn't strike at the core of consumers, but it's still if the tariffs increase across all goods, they will increase prices.
Yeah, so I guess two questions with tariffs. How do you avoid a tariff?
You don't put put one on the other country.
No, let's pretend you're Toyota. How do you avoid a tariff coming into America?
Oh, you transfer the money, the cost to the consumer.
Nope.
Why not?
Nope, no. How do you avoid a tariff if you're Toyota?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
You build the car in America.
Oh, okay. I
so
understand.
No, it's not a trick. Hold on, it's not a trick question, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you what's happened. For example, Lyndon Baines Johnson, not my favorite president, put a 25% tariff on pickup trucks. Most people don't know this exists. Toyota actually, per capita, has some of the most popular pickup trucks in the country. Who here knows a Toyota pickup truck? I guarantee some of you guys do. They make all of them in America to avoid that tariff. So when you're the incumbent economic power, tariffs are actually really, really helpful. Now, if you're a small fledgling country, such as Portugal, tariffs can be really, really disastrous because you do not have the global reserve currency status. There's been a lot of fraudulent and flimsy economic studies done by major corporations that have made you seem as if free trade is the greatest thing ever. But for example, solar panel tariffs, pickup truck tariffs, even household appliances and electric tariffs, what happens over time is these companies want to do business with us, so they end up bending the knee and building their plant in America,
right,
which is great for industry, great for our jobs.
It's not a zero-sum game. You realize that when you're building something here that could be better built somewhere else, that money could be spent.
Oh, hold on. No, this is interesting.
Yes.
So, of course, it could be cheaper in China.
Yes.
But wouldn't you rather have Americans be employed to make it?
Well, that's my choice as a consumer. It's not a choice of the government to impose a tax to tell me where to buy it.
Well, actually, Vivek can chip in. This is where we have a moral difference. Yes. I think our government actually has a moral obligation to employ its citizens before the cheapest possible good.
So let me, I'm pretty, people who might have been following me know, I'm pretty libertarian in my instincts. Let me just ask you a question about this. If another country is applying a tariff to the United States on our own goods, is it fair game to say that we got to play by the same rules in both directions?
Well, I'm a fan, honestly, of turning the other cheek in that sense.
See,
because,
so that's where you and I differ. Because I'm pretty libertarian on a lot of, I mean, but I think we actually land in a very similar place. Well, I land in the same place as Donald Trump does when you look at his actions as U.S. president. All right, what he did as U.S. president was, because I'm going somewhere with this. First of all, you take another country that puts a tariff on us. What we have been doing is turning the other cheek for too long. And I am a big fan of following our Judeo-Christian values in the country and the way we live our lives, but not in our economic policy to turn the other cheek when we're being slapped by other countries with tariffs on the other side. Because you got to be strong enough to protect who you are. So number one is, with Donald Trump, you actually end up looking at what he ended up doing. Tariffs he slapped on are actually to countries that have been applying those tariffs to us asymmetrically. That's not free trade. That's not playing by the same set of rules. Now you'll see some other cases where tariffs were applied, but they say, oh no, is the other country actually applying a tariff? There's a lot of ways to apply a tariff. One of the ways you apply a tariff is you get state sponsorship. So in those other countries, even in Japan, even in other countries around the TPP partnership, what they do is those governments support their own companies when our own government does not support those industries here. That effectively is a tariff because it makes our own companies less competitive. So in some ways, this whole debate about tariffs and Donald Trump, two things are true about it. One is Biden's kept every one of the tariffs that Donald Trump has, so it's not a choice between the two candidates. Number two is pragmatically, when you look at the way Donald Trump did this, he's a pragmatist. What he ended up doing was just applying a tariff to countries that already applied one to us, directly or indirectly. And even as somebody who leans pretty libertarian, I'll tell you, it is totally fair game for demanding that other countries play by the same set of rules that we do, rather than turning the other cheek economically, which is not the thing I think we should be doing in America.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just one more. You do not have a free market, which embedded in the idea of a free market is that you have an independent rule system. If one country's tariffing you and you are not, in fact, then you're actually disadvantaging your country for no particular reason. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. I just want to say thank you for coming to Georgia State. My name is Alex, and I agree with you on a lot of points. However, one thing you said earlier today, specifically on the Ukraine-Russia war, is that you said you don't believe that Russia's our enemy, and I just have to disagree with you because I believe any anti-democratic, anti-American, anti-freedom state is our enemy, including multiple nations in Africa, Asia, China, North Korea, including Russia. And I also agree, this isn't very popular, but not right now because I don't believe that U.S. should get more involved with the Ukraine war. However, I do believe that we should accept more NATO applicants, including Taiwan, Japan.
Taiwan and NATO?
Yes.
The North Atlantic. You know that's like.
I know. Yeah.
It's like putting Cal in the ACC.
Yeah. They did it though. But the only reason I believe that is just because I believe it's our, role in the world. Not many people believe this, but it's our role in the world to protect democracy and freedom. Yeah, sure.
So, look, I understand the impulse. I think our role, the role of U.S. elected leaders, is to make sure that U.S. citizens actually prosper.
I agree.
And the best thing we can do for other democracies around the world is to set an example of what's possible in the United States. Because if the shining city on a hill no longer still shines, no other democracy has a chance.
I agree.
So why do you believe it's the moral responsibility of the United States to make sure other countries follow our exact model of the way we govern ourselves when they might be perfectly well governed in a different way than the way we choose to here?
Well, I believe that applies to democratic nations like the United Kingdom and Germany, other NATO countries, and Taiwan. But while they all have their issues,
but it's like Saudi Arabia, an enemy of the United States because they have a king?
No.
Okay, so what you said, so I think that your position is maybe a little bit different than what you said, which is that, do you think that the United States of America should view any nation that's not democratic as an enemy? I don't think so, because otherwise half the world would be our enemy.
Yeah.
So it's not our job to be the global policeman. And you know who suffers when that's the case? It's actually you and your generation. How old are you, man?
17.
You're 17 years old. $35 trillion national debt in this country's fallen on your shoulders. $8 trillion of that is due to wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that we overstayed and or should not have been in the first place. And it's going to be somebody else's gun over your shoulder fighting somebody else's war in somebody else's trench if we volunteer to be the global policeman. That's not the role of the United States. The role for the United States in the world is to show what is possible when we live by the ideals that made this country great the first time around. That's how we're actually going to make America great again. It's not for even my sake or Charlie's sake. At this point, we're older than you guys. It's going to be for you and your generation to make sure you don't find yourself fighting for somebody else's freedom in a country where they may not even want it because we think they want democracy where that isn't the way their cultural tradition has worked for as long as their countries existed. It should not be our job to view that government as an enemy and fight for it. It's a mistake that, frankly, Republicans and Democrats have made over the last 30 years, and it's time for it to finally stop. And Donald Trump, I'll give him credit for this. He was a guy who in 2016, this is what the Republican Party used to think. He showed up on that debate stage, and the first guy to say the Iraq War was wrong wasn't a Democrat, really, with prominence. It was Donald Trump in 2016. And that's, I think, the future direction of the country. Thank you, man.
I agree with
Thank
that.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Go vote, everybody. Thank you.